I got the GIs again. I had eaten the fish, and they had cooked it in some kind of oil that they shouldn't have done it with. But I was the only one who really got sick of it. I must have gotten more than my share. But anyway, I was sick as a dog again, see, with the GIs. That's when I got very careful about just eating anything, see. So anyway, we got back to the train, came on back to Quayland, and reported that we wanted this place as a rest camp. And so the staff agreed, and told me, said, you make arrangements to go on and get this thing set up. Well, the Japs started moving from the north about that time. They took Henyang before we had a chance to do anything about it, and this place was just probably 20, 30 miles out of Henyang. So they got there, and we never did use it. It was, the Japs had it before we did. So we never had a rest camp the whole time I was in China. No, there was nothing. So, and the rest was, playing basketball or volleyball rather, or baseball or something like that, and going to town and having a meal. Now, about the meal time, we went to town like we did that night when the case says, in my office, my quarters. We went to town, and we did that every month if they had a moonless night and we didn't have any indication of the Japs coming. And we went to the one or two Chinese-American restaurants in Quayland. We went to one of them mostly. And we would take our C and K rations with us and go in, and then the restaurant would use whatever vegetables they got, which they did. They could get those, but rarely get meat. So they would take what we had and give us about a 12 to 15 course meal. I mean, this is a lot. And we'd be from 7 to 11, see, before we came back. So that's 4 hours to eat a meal. Well, so there's 6 of you, 8 of you around this table. And you have one course, and the first thing when you get it is, let's have a little hot xiaoxian. That's a wine that's made out of rice, and it's called xiaoxian. It's served hot like tea in a Gambay cup. I didn't bring that in here, I should have. Anyway, it's a Gambay cup. It holds about a jig and a half of wine, hot wine. So it's poured around, and then the host, whoever's host, says, Gambay. That means bottoms up. So everybody, Gambay, you see. Well, now this is 7 o'clock, and you're going to end up at 11. This is the first course, and you're going to have about 12 courses. So Gambay on the first man, and we got to go around this table. Every man comes down this way and says Gambay. That's 6 to 8. Gambay is at the first course. So by the time you've done this one time around, or maybe before you go all the way around, when you pour it the next time, when the next course comes around, he'll say the same thing, Gambay. Well, you start saying sway bien, which is as you like it. And so you just sip. Of course, there's always the argument back and forth. No Gambay, no sway bien, no sway bien. So that goes around. And by the time we finished the second course, now, we had potentially had about 16 ounces of hot xiaoxian, see? So then you touch your lips with it, see, and go around. Now, if you don't do these things, I'll assure you that by the time you go around 4 times, you won't be able to sit on that stool, because it's 1 ounce of xiaoxian it's just like wine, 10% maybe, but that's a lot of drinks. 4 times 48 drinks. So you just start touching your lips with this stuff, and we end up with the 10, 12 courses, and they're all good individual things like. One will be rice, and one will be some vegetable or some kind of meat or fish. That's a course, see. And when it gets through, one of them is a dessert thrown in there somewhere around 8 or 9, and that'll be something sweet. And then you finish up with whatever they got left with that food you sent. And they make up something and send it out there, and we eat it, see. But around 11 o'clock, we call it quits and pay the bill and go. Well, we got to drive. Somebody got to drive. So we had a designated driver that always, he stopped at about the 4th Gambay, and he was all right to get us there, so we'd take it home. And then we'd go on home and get in bed and go. But that was only once a month, and only then, if the activities went too heavy, where we could take time to go away, because when activity was heavy where the Japs were coming towards us, we were running planes all day long. We'd run sometimes 6 flights a day. I mean, that's the same plane with the same pilot going out about 6 times a day. That meant we were pretty active, and those nights we were busy keeping track of, those who were injured or shot down or what. So during active times, we were busy day and night. And then I had to write Emily too, so for the night, so I wrote her something. So that's where it was, keeping busy.
Why don't you tell us about your uniform?
The one I'm wearing?
Yeah.
Well, this uniform I have on is the same as I showed you in there in the picture, where it says just before going behind the Jap lines. And I wore the shirt that I'm wearing right now for that time, and I was out in that area. See, when I first went back across the lines after the Japs had cut us in two, and we had evacuated and blown up and destroyed Quay Lin. We started Henyang, Ling Ling, and Quay Lin, and that's when I took over destroying. Was it Quay Lin and getting the people out? After I got the people out by plane, then I took the last convoy out, and after we blew the base and the last thing burned, and I went to Luzhou. And Luzhou, that's when I became the executive officer of Casey. And there we did the same thing. We did over there, and I got there about 2 weeks and had to go same route. So we got everybody out by air that we could, and then with our transports that we had trucks to take them out, we sent them out, and then I would see that everything is blown and everybody got out. And then I went out with my convoy, which was usually a small one, because that was just what was to take the last people out and the last supplies. And then we were out to the staging area, which was probably about 30, 40 miles. And there, the Japs, they were trying to come around us, and they were, I was sworn I saw them coming over a hill when we were on that road going out, because they were that close according to our maps. We thought they were there, but I didn't know. But
what year was this? When was this?
That was in September. September of 44. September 44.
So the Japanese, they actually overran your base.
Oh, they overran all of them, and here's let's see if I haven't got a map of that in here. I'll show you it. They had come from Changsha, which is up here, and it comes through Henyang, Ling Ling. Here it is up here. Where is the hang? Yeah, Henyang, Ling Ling, Quay Lin, and then Luzhou. So they came right down to here. So they were coming down this way, see, and they came up from French Indochina this way, and they were, excuse me, I was on the wrong thing. Here's Ling Ling, and here's Henyang. That's right, they came this way instead of that way, this way. Henyang, Ling Ling, Quay Lin, Luzhou. And then I took the mountain road from here, about 1,000 miles back this way to Kunming. So the Japs had come this way and this way and gone down up this way to cut us off. So we were isolated. This is where I took the convoy from here, like this, to Kunming, and out to Luliang, which was right here. And then I stayed there about 2 weeks, and they decided that they're going to send me out to write an evacuation plan of Sichuan. That's right out here. See, here's the line that we got cut off by. So they had this. We couldn't get across here, or flew. And we were still operating B-24s, B-25s, and P-40s, and from this base here, Sichuan. So I went out there and wrote the plan, and within a month, the Japs came here, and we had to get out. So I had to destroy it, and I went down to a place called Kanzhou, right there. Now, I had 2 more bases down here. that they just started coming up this way, so I had to get rid of these, blow them up, get them out. Now, I had people that did that. I didn't physically do it myself. I had demolition people. But got those there and got the people out back to here, and within 5 days after that, they started coming from both directions, and I had to go to Shanting with another convoy. And when I got here, this is the last base in all of East China. And it's just a little landing strip. We had to extend it to make it so P-40s could land there, and B-25s with no load. They could come out with personnel, but they couldn't take off with any load. So it was a fighter staging place and also a supply thing for mail and other things for the troops that were out there. And we had guerrilla training groups. They're all usually about 5 to 10 men, and they were guerrillas, they were weather, they were intelligence, they were counterintelligence, that kind of thing in this area, but they got their supplies through us. So once I got there, within 3 days, I took a Jeep and took a couple of guys with me, and we went around like this to find out where we go from here, because there was nothing to go, and these were just landing strips also, and they were not even good as this. So our next move was to go to the mountains, hills, see. So that was our next plan, and we moved stuff up to here that we could get out of here in a way and have some supplies here and then disperse in the mountains.
Yeah.
But
when the evacuation plan, under these evacuation plans, I'm assuming when you evacuated your first base, you evacuated Overland.
yeah.
And they moved the planes, I mean, they just flew the planes out, right?
Yeah, I evacuated. I was always in a vehicle leaving with the last group. My job was to get everybody out, destroy everything, and then I would go out with the last demolition crew. So 6 bases, that's what I did. I went out. Just
6 bases?
6 bases, right. And some of them were pretty close. The weather was such that you couldn't go out when you thought you could, and you may have to stay there 2 or 3 days. And you just depended on the intelligence, Chinese intelligence, or where they are, where the Japs are. And as the Japs got closer, these so-called intelligence Japanese units disappear. They get out of the way. They weren't going to get caught by the Japs, so they disappeared. So your intelligence stopped. The closer they got, the less intelligence you had. So you had to, as I say, pace the floor to make that final decision. When do we go? And it was close. I'll assure you, I didn't sleep much during those last days. Look back at it was frightening, really, because you were responsible for all these people, and you had to do it. Now let's see.
When you were out doing this, since you were the last person to pull out, did you have a regular did you have an armed escort with you of some sort, or was it just you and a couple other people?
Just you, me, and whoever was with me. There was
Really?
no armed escort, none at all. Now, when I went on special mission, behind the Jap lines, I always had a Chinese interpreter and Chinese troops of anywhere from 10 to 40, depending on where we were and how close to the Jap. But evacuation, no, it was us. I'll tell you one thing, when we left, let's see, what was it? When I left Sichuan to go down to Quanzhou, that's when I went back across the lines and had to evacuate that. The fuel pump on my Jeep went out, and the whole thing I had was a pair of pliers and a screwdriver. And I didn't have any spare parts, nothing. This is a Jeep. Well, I'm not a Jeep mechanic, but I became one right quick because we were going through what was known as bandit area. And we really were as afraid of bandits as we were of Japs, because they'd block the road and shoot right then. And before anything said or done, they start shooting, see. And they try to get whoever was in charge, which happened later on, I'll tell you about. And that's what we were afraid of. So what I did, I put guards out, and there were about, I had three men that I put out just along the road and on one side. And they were to sort of forewarn us if anybody came that looked like they were strange folks. so that we could at least get our arms out and be ready. In the meantime, I had a raincoat that looked like that gasket. And in the meantime, I'd use my pair of pliers and screwdrivers to take the cover off of that pump. Crawl on the ground, and I've given I had a trench coat that got soaked with oil that night. You know, getting under that Jeep, and there was no place to put it up. You had to crawl under there and fix it. So anyway, I got that thing off and cut my raincoat, made a new gasket, and put it back on there with a screwdriver and a pair of pliers. Finally got it going, and it worked. And we got the engine going and went on. We went down to Canjo. But that probably took about 2 or more hours to do that, because, you know, it's going underneath the Jeep and trying to do all this stuff and make the gasket, and not even knowing what you're going to do till you get it out. But anyway, that was that night.
Now, what kind of weapons did you carry on the Jeep?
From Lujo to Kunming, since I knew the Japs were close and the road crossed, if they were going to go around us, we had to cross that road. I mounted a Bren gun on the front, top of the Jeep, a Bren gun on the cops, the front.
How did you get a hold of a British Bren gun?
Well, it was, you know, always evacuation. A lot of things show up, see, and that was one of them. It just happened to show up, and it was there, and I had some ammunition for it, so I just mounted it on the hood of my Jeep.
That's neat.
Yeah, and it was, and you know, that's the reason why I told you I stopped there and looked, and I saw the Jap. Well, I had turned my Jeep that way because I wanted the convoy to get by, and I was going to stay there if the Japs came. And also the floorboard was full of hand grenades, and I had those ready to go. So that was it. And then I had a carbine, which is a small rifle, and my pistol. That was my ammunition and my arms. That's all. But I didn't ever have the machine gun or any of these other. I just had my carbine and my 45. But you do what you can. That's what you got. That's it. And that's what we're going to do.
Well, that, you know, you read about the China-Burma-India theater, and you read a lot about how, you know, equipage was not as easily as available as it was in the other theaters, that it was kind of a forgotten theater of the war.
We didn't even have a machine gun. That's another reason why I used a Bren gun. It was in the things that I got. In fact, like a 45. I lost my 45 in that evacuation at Quail Inn. I don't know what happened to it, but gosh, here's a big box of 45s. There must have been a couple of dozen of them in there. So I just opened it up and got myself another 45, put it in my holster, cleaned it, ready to go, see. Well, when I went back later, and this was, 4 or 5 months later, I went to headquarters, and I reported to a good classmate of mine. He was a brother at VMI, and he was the quartermaster for the 14th Air Force. He was a full colonel. And I knew he was there. I hadn't seen him since we graduated, see. So I went in to see him, and he says, "Colonel Hightower, I'm going to prefer charges against you." And I said, "What for?" He says, "You lost your pistol, and I have it. And that's a court-martial offense for a guy to lose his pistol, see." And I said, "Well, thank God you got it, because I didn't know where it was." He says, "I know that, and that's the reason why I got it. Now, what's your explanation of why you left it?" I said, "I have no idea. All I know is I put it down somewhere." And then in evacuation, and I was so busy, I didn't even think of it again until I was ready to go, and I went in the box and got another one, see. He said, "Where's the other one?" I got it right here, sir. And I gave it to him. I said, "I'll swap with you." Mine was a better one than this one, see. So we swapped, and then we had a drink, and that was it, see.
I know we're kind of jumping around, but...
That's all right.
When you were acting as the adjutant, what rank did you hold?
Major.
Major.
Yeah. See, I was a major until, it was later. See, but as long as I was at Quail Inn, I was a major. Then all this evacuation back to Kunming, I was a major. Then when I flew back out to Sichuan, see, Chennault had been, he hadn't been replaced. Casey Vinson had been rotated. He'd gone home, and Colonel Klassen had taken his place. So when I went out to Sichuan, I was his executive officer. See, and at that point, let's see what the hell. I got promoted to lieutenant colonel at that point. But see, Casey had put me in for it back in August, I guess, but it took that long to get it through. So anyway, it came through, and Colonel Classen was the one that pinned my silver leafs on. And that was the last promotion I had, because I hadn't been in grade long enough to get any more. I had 3 positions after that held the rank. In fact, that rank then, when I took over the CO of the forward echelon, I was a full colonel. And then when I took over the base command job at Péchy, I was a full colonel. So I had the rank, had the job of a full colonel, but I had been in grade long enough, so I couldn't get it. Got any other questions? I have some more. I'm going to tell them the story.
Well, please do. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. See, after we left Chennault, Sichuan to Chennault, and they came in from both angles, went back to Chanting, and I took that loop trip to see where we're going to go next. They made me CO of the forward echelon of the 68 Composite Wing, which is out there by yourself, and you make all the decisions, and you run it. You run the show. So I accepted it without any problem, because those are the orders. You do it. So that meant that I was in charge of everything that went on out there, and I had, when we evacuated Chennault, and coming down that line, Sichuan, Chennault, I tried to pick the men I wanted to stay with me, because we needed people not only to run the base, we needed people to help with maintenance, we needed people for transportation, run the transportation, all of that, see. And so anyway, with that, I had a real good crew of people there. I thought they were hand-picked, and all the rest of them we sent back. Well, a lot of them didn't want to go back because they didn't want to go back to headquarters. It was better to be out there on your own and under somebody like me, because I'm not bragging, I was a pretty good commanding officer. I got them to do things by showing I do it too. And I had a real firm grip, and I want you to read what my chaplain wrote about me regarding that, because I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed command and getting things done. So anyway, we were doing special missions with fighters. They'd come in one day, run a mission the next, and then come back out. So it's a 3-day operation. That's because the Japs were coming towards us. Every time we did this, they'd come towards us like they're going to take us. And they could have done it if they wanted to. But we did have a lot of Chinese troops around us in the mountainous area, and it would have been costly. So they would come far enough to scare us. Well, we already had planned that we were going to do it 1, 2, 3, and you were out. And except for the planes that got damaged, they stayed and got fixed and then out. And we'd wait a while, and then maybe a month or 6 weeks later, we'd do it again, see? And the Japs would come in, and we'd run our missions and get out, see? So this kept up the whole time we got there, but we were primarily a supply base. No mail. We didn't get the mail, but we got, necessary supplies, medical supplies, and ammunition and gasoline to fly the planes. So that's what I did at that time. And I was also responsible for getting people out that were shot down and get them out and get medical attention to them. By a lot of times they'd send an extra plane out, and they'd go out in a C-47 or 6 and jump wherever he was with a medic. And then if he needed that kind of attention, and take care of him and then bring him out on a stretcher, see. But that was my job, was to, as CO of the forward echelon, to do anything we had to do in that area to operate as a combat unit, see. So, and that was very interesting. And it came to the end when I got bronchitis real bad, and the doctor kept saying, "You got to go back." And I said, "No, never. Just keep me well. I'm gonna stay out here." So that went on for about a month or so, and finally he got word back to the head medic at Kunming to get this guy back. He needs to go to the hospital. So they sent my replacement out with the orders that he's going to take my place. Well, I was very perturbed because I didn't want to go, and I didn't think I was sick enough to go. But anyway, the doc says, you're going. I've already gotten to write the orders, and you're going. You get on that plane. So after a few words here and there, and we had a celebration, because this was right at about the end of the European War. So I got on a plane and went out, as I say, under protest. And I went back and got to come to me. And I had wired ahead for the Surgeon General of the 14th to meet my plane and take me to the hospital, because I want somebody to get me in there and get me out once I would do whatever they got to do. So he met me and took me to the hospital and went in there, and I checked in, and they said, check him out and keep me informed, and I'll get him out of here when it's time to get him out. He thinks he'll get out tomorrow, but you keep him here until we get this thing settled. Anyway, I went in, and the next night, I felt a sore throat. I couldn't hardly swallow. And it turned out I had strep throat. And that night, they gave me something, and I didn't wake up for 2 days. It had just permeated my body. And so anyway, I went out. Anyway, they put me on the medication, and within about 10 days, I was all right. I felt I was all right, and I called the surgeon and told him to get me out of here, which he did. He came over and got me out, and Chennault had said he'd see him as soon as I got out, which I did. Within 2 days, I was heading for East China again, behind the Jap lines. He'd sent me out there on another special mission, see that he wanted it done. And so I got on a plane and I took off, and I had to do a lot of walking, after I got across the line up to where I had to go in the mountains. And I felt all right. It was all right. And then I came back and had to make arrangements for Wiedemeyer, who was a theater commander. He wanted to see General Shio, they call him the Little Tiger. He's a warlord, and he wanted to find out what he could do to help us if we had to go out there to go into Japan. And because he's been one of the best supporters of Chennault in that whole area. So I had to go out and make arrangements with the warlord Shio to let Wiedemeyer come out. And I went back and told Chennault that. And this time I was going out and walking in, and on the way in to the place where Shio was up in the mountains, it was about a 4-day walk, and we could walk around 20 miles a day with this group. It was about 60, well, I was 4 days before, because it was about 80 miles. I fell out, and I didn't know what hit me, but something hit me. My left arm hurt, my chest hurt, and everything. I know what it is now, but I didn't know then. I just felt like I just couldn't go, so I held this group up that were walking with me, Chinese guards, and there was no other American with me, just my interpreter, and that's all. So I fell out for a couple of hours and finally got up, and I was able to walk to the next place where the Chinese were going to put us up on before. No, it was the last stage. It was the last place just before you're going to see Shio. Anyway, and the first thing they brought me was a whole platter of fried eggs, about 6 or 7 eggs, see. And I was sick. I couldn't even look at it much to eat it. So anyway, they took it away, and I went and saw the general that night of that particular compound and talked to him and had dinner with him, but I didn't eat much. Anyway, I got over it. Now, really, I'm telling you this because I had a heart attack later, and that's what it was. Really? Arm, chest pains. I had a heart attack and didn't even know it, see? Didn't know what I had. Wow. And got up and went on, and had no trouble with it. Just kept on going. And fortunately, it was not a lasting one, and I got through. So there's no record that I had a heart attack, but now when I look back, because see, I've had all kind of heart trouble since then. 6 bypasses and a few other things. Wow. So, but I'm a new man since I had those 6 bypasses. That's a wonderful operation. And I've been all right ever since. And that's been, 14 years ago. Thank God. Yeah.
I've got a question, and just based on your personal experience while in China, we hear about the problems between Stillwell and Chennault. Can you speak to anything?
I sure can, because I was on Chennault's side, Stillwell was over here, and it was just like that. Never the train shall meet between the Air Corps and the infantry. And it was just that way. I mean, here's Stillwell, and now I've read about him since. I've read his histories and his papers and all that, and I have a different attitude towards Stillwell now. I mean, he was a fine officer, dedicated officer, and he did a great job of training the Chinese to be able to fight. He fed them, he clothed them, and treated them right, and they were fighting, and they had something to fight with, arms, ammunition, and they were good soldiers, and they did a good job. But during that period, I was out in East China at the end of the supply line, getting nothing, no mail for 5 months, and this kind of thing. So I was very much a Chennault man, I'm telling you, because he was my CO, and he was trying to get these things for us and couldn't get them. Because, see, the supply over the hump, when it first started, was very little. That was the first air transport like that that had ever been done. Now, we built it up, we tried to build it up before the European War was over, but it was almost after that before we really began to get stuff over the hump to mount anything. So we didn't get it. But the priorities were gas, ammunition, and spare parts, medical supplies, and that kind of thing that had to come. So they were given priority, but nothing else. PX supplies, mail, or anything, clothing, we never got any of that, or anything that, well, even cigarettes were hard to get, or tobacco. Most of that I got from my wife. We call that tender care packages. And that's where I got most of my tobacco from, was she sent it over to me, see. So there was a feeling of, you know, we're not getting what we should be getting. And then Stillwell, of course, he was interested in his ground troops, which were in India and Burma, to fight their way back to drive the Japs out of Burma, and then to come into China. So he wanted to do that. Well, now see, when the Japs came down from Changsha and started taking our bases, we wanted to get ammunition and machine guns and cannons for the Chinese troops to hold them back. They got nothing, nothing, no support at all from our planes coming over the hump. Just what we could get out of Chiang Kai-shek to give these warlords, and if they were not on his side, they got nothing, nothing. So this is where our feeling came from. You know, here we're not getting anything, then Japs are coming in and running us out of East China, which they did. They ran us all out of, except that one base, Chenting. We were through in East China. All of our operations were from back behind those lines. So I had a very strong feeling, just like Chennault did. Give us the supplies if he wants to fight this war. Now here's he getting what he could, and he didn't have enough really to get his, because there just weren't enough planes or material to do it. So this is the basic, it was just absolutely crossed. And so there was that bitterness that lasted till Chennault left. Well, Stillwell left first, and then Chennault left. But when Wiedemeyer came over, he was a more considerate guy and diplomatic. See, Stillwell was pretty direct, and he called, him Peanut, called Chiang Kai-shek Peanut, and more or less, he didn't show any respect for him at all, really. But Wiedemeyer did, and he had the same position Stillwell is, which was Chief of Staff to Chiang Kai-shek as well as Theater Commander. It was a confused theater. In fact, CBI is confusion beyond imagination. And that's tough for CBI, see? Starting from the top down. Here's a guy who's head of our troops. He's Chief of Staff to Chiang Kai-shek and Theater Commander, see? And then you had the British in there that were also Theater Commander, see? So it was a pretty mixed-up deal, really.
Did you, speaking of the British, did you ever have any interaction with the British in the theater?
Yeah, I had Chanting. They had detachments around just like we did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they were there at my base. They ate at my mess. Fine folks, Australians, New Zealanders, Canadians, and British. They all had units out there. See, they were fighting alongside of us, see.
Right.
There was a different style. It was like that boat trip I was telling you about. They were, it's just like we're still on our cruise ship, or we're still on our tour of this country, see, because that country used to be theirs practically.
Right.
The British, through Hong Kong, they did a lot of control in China, I'll tell you that. So they'd been there, and but they were fine people. I just enjoyed being with them, and I had no problem with them at all. I I guess I just liked them and I got along with them. I had no problem. But there was this feeling, definitely.
Go ahead.
I just have a question. Did you have a favorite memory from the war?
Did I what?
Did you have a favorite memory from the
A
war?
favorite memory?
Something that stands out.
I hadn't thought about this, but I do have favorite memories of various things that happened, which were surprises a lot of times, or you get something you hadn't expected. But I guess the favorite time was when at Chanting, I got my mail after 5 months, from December till the end of May. And that was a breakup. Oh, that was that was the first time I'd heard from Emily in that long, 5 months. And of course, my letters to her. In fact, one of our mutual friends was in the Puerto Rican outfit that landed out in Chanting one time, and I met him. He didn't have any idea that he was the husband of this good friend of Emily's, and he didn't know that, I was emailed there. And then finally he found out that I was her husband, not for me, but somewhere else. And he wrote his wife, and she's given me a copy of that letter. It says, I ran into Emily's husband. I think that's who it is, he says. His name was George Hightower, and he was at one of the forward bases. But you tell her that she probably won't hear from him for quite a while. But he's all right. And just tell her that, see. So things like that I get kind of emotional about. I can't hold it. But anyway, that was a real high point when I got those letters. And packages that were just, unless it was in a can, it was no good after that time. Let's see what else. I can't. I'll see if I can think of while I'm talking. Now, let's see. I left Chanting, when I was, as I told you, and went back, and then Chennault sent me on that special mission. Then he sent me on the one to get arrangements for Wiedemeyer to go out and see the General Warlord. And I did that. And incidentally, Wiedemeyer he's just like anybody else. He's theater commander, lieutenant general, and just a great guy, really was. And, of course, I'd say he sort of met me in my element, which was out there behind the Jap lines. But we got along real good, and he accomplished his mission with the Warlord. And then when I took him out and he went out with it, he came out in a little puddle jumper, one-engine plane, flew over, and there was a place they could land, but no transports could land at all. So, but anyway, I had to go out and then walk in. It was always about a 4-day trip from where I landed to where I went, to the CAO's headquarters. So now I'm leaving, I'm doing these missions for Chennault, and I've done that for Wiedemeyer, and the last mission was to go on a special top-secret mission to go behind the Jap lines again, near the coastline, to see if we could use an area there to land our troops on the China coast, stage them from there into Japan. That's the reason I say if we'd done that, I would have been in that group, because I spent 5 weeks going all over that area, finding places we could build airfields, or the airfield was there, or whatever else we could use, a machine shop, textile mill, or whatever they had there. It was a manufacturing plant that could be converted to something that we could use to supply us to get these troops in there, and then to go into Japan for the landing. Now, this is just before the bomb was dropped. So I really went out there with, there was a colonel in charge of our outfit, but after a week, he was in his 50s, and they should never send him out there. Hell, he couldn't do it. So he went back, and I was made CO of the outfit, so I was CO for that 5 weeks, the remaining 4 weeks that we were out there. And we had an artillery officer who was a lieutenant colonel, like I was, and there was a captain in infantry. And we went all over that area and cataloged everything we had, and I submitted the report when I got back. And I've never seen a copy of that report because it was top secret, and I haven't been able to find out where it is to begin with.
Really?
Yeah. And so the attended report in, and that was to Chennault, and that was the last time I saw him. When he was telling me about this situation of they're taking all my gas and they're sending all these people over here that I can't feed, and they're taking over the command of the whole place, and he was just bitter. He really was, and he wasn't a crying type, but the water was coming out of his ears because he was very emotional about it, and I felt for him because I knew that they hadn't treated him right, and they hadn't. Because he was a maverick, and hell, I consider myself a maverick too. Over there, you did what you had to do, and that's the reason I got these court-martial things. I did what I had to do. You don't have orders to do it, you do it. And that's what I did, and that's what he was doing. But anyway, 2 days later, he left, resigned, and went home. And when they had to surrender on the Missouri, the rumor was, they were heard this, that MacArthur says, "Where's Chennault?" And of course nobody knew because he left and took a sort of a vacation for 3 weeks going home. Went through Europe and all that. So he'd heard about it, but he wasn't there, and he should have been. See? So anyway, let's see, now after this we see where to go now. Oh, I finished that mission, the intelligence mission, and turned in a report to Chennault, and he left. And I was around there for a couple of days, and then General Stone, Charlie Stone, he was another Major General, and he was made head of the 14th Air Force. And so he called me in because of all this experience I'd had out there in East China. And he said, "I want you to be base commander of the 14th Air Force base. We're moving from Kunming up to Peishi outside of Chongqing, up there to be near headquarters. They tell us that's what we got to do. I want you to go up there and set that base up, and I'll have people up there. The first person will be there in 5 days." And we had about, I think it was 1,500 men to move this headquarters, set up the message. Now, it was a base, but a smaller base, and it couldn't handle that many people, so I had to go up there and set it up, which I did. And I got everybody, Chinese I could, to get working on additional barracks, but mainly mess halls and latrines, where I could take care of these troops. So I set up tents, and they started moving in 5 days. 2 weeks later, they all moved in, and I could handle them. They had beds, tents, latrines. They had mess halls, which I converted barracks to, and made the men go to tents. And I had them ready, and they moved his headquarters up there. And in that process, though, Stone's chief of staff was up there, and he had instructions to fix the general a tent house. Well, he interpreted that as a penthouse. And so when I was trying to do all these, meet deadlines and everything, he started taking my, key people, carpenters, electricians, whatever they were, to build this penthouse, see. So it was about a week, in the process about a week. I had another week to go. He came up, wanted to know how I was doing. And he had his chief of staff with him then. And I said, "General, I'm doing fine, but your chief of staff has taken my key people, and I can't make the deadline unless I get them back." He turned to the chief of staff and says, "You take those men?" He says, "Well, I had to fix your quarters." He says, "You give them back to Hightower. I'll live in whatever we got here. I told you I want a tent house, and I'll take one of those tents out there if necessary." Boy, he was embarrassed like hell. See, he gave me hell the last 3 months I was there. See. But anyway, I got my men back, and I finished on time. See, but I mean, this is the way I operate. I'm funny. If we got a job to do, I'm going to do what I can to get that job done. So let me see. Went from there. They made me this base commander, and of course we had more administrative job there of all these people that were coming in from India and processed them into Kunming and people out of Kunming. And then, of course, this is after the surrender. And so there were a lot of people leaving. But I kept all my people. They couldn't leave until, it let down enough so I could let them go. So finally, I went to General, in fact, I'd been talking to him, but this time I went because I had gotten a couple letters from Emily saying she was going somewhere, Highlands or something like that, and she didn't know when I was coming home. So when I got to the States, let her know, see. So I got worried about this situation there. So I told Colonel Klassen, I got to go home. He says, no, you just wait a minute. No, General Stone it was. General Stone, he says, you wait and I'll take you out to Shanghai. I said, General, I've been here 3 months now after the war's over. My wife has all our friends home and I'm still over here, and she's getting worried about what I'm doing over here. So I said, I got to go home. I said, I'd like to go through Shanghai, but just let me have orders, let me go home. So after about two days of this, he finally said, I believe you're sincere. And I said, yes, sir, General, I'd like to stay with you, but and I've been with you 3 months, but I just got to go, that's all. War's over, and I got to go home. So he said, okay, issue orders. So I got orders issued, and within 24 hours, I was on a plane heading back to go across the hump. Went down to Kunming and over the hump back to India. So when I got back to India, I mean, just a load of people trying to get on planes and boats and all that kind of stuff. All of them trying to get home, just like me. So after about a couple of weeks of this, I said, heck, I went down to the port. That was at, what's the name of the port on the East Coast? Can't think of it right now, but anyway, it was a major town there. It was the worst town in India. And I went down to the port, and I saw a Liberty ship out there with an American flag on it. I went in, talked to the captain. I said, you got any room for anybody to go on this boat? He said, yeah, I got 2 of these boxes on the deck that are wired down. It'll hold 8 men each, 4 bunks on each side. And if you want to go, be here by 8 o'clock tomorrow night, and you can get aboard. I said, are you serious? And I said, yeah. He said, yeah. I said, I'll be here. So I went to headquarters. I got orders cut for 8 men that were waiting to get on. And then there were about 4 officers with me, and we got 4 others that were waiting. And we got orders cut on 8 officers and 8 enlisted men, and we were on that boat at 6 o'clock that next afternoon. And we poured it in and said, Captain, we're here. Now, where you going to put us? So he said, enlisted men here, the officers in the other box, and says, y'all can go with us. I said, where are you going? He said, Ceylon. I said, where from there? He said, I don't have any idea. He said, we got orders to go to Ceylon, which is down at the end of India, And I'm going to offload some stuff, and I'm going to take on some gas and wait for orders. So we went to Ceylon, and he did just that. And 2 days later, he got orders to go to Port Said, which is at the canal, Suez Canal. So we stopped at a place called Aden, just before you go into the canal. He got orders to, take on gas and let off some stuff, and we went through the canal to Port Said, which is on the Mediterranean side. And we stopped there and waited about 2 days, let off some stuff, took on some gas, oil, and went through the Mediterranean. And then I said, where are we going now? He says, Gibraltar. So we went to Gibraltar, and he blew the whistle a couple of times. They blew the whistle, and he said, we're going to Boston. We went across the Atlantic and got home. It took about 36 days to come home. So, and I got to Boston, was processed, got on a day coach train, and went straight to Augusta, Georgia, and was mustered out. And Emily, I had called from New York. I couldn't get her, but I got her father, and he told her that I was coming to Augusta and for her to be over there 2 days from then. And she was there, and so I got discharged to the reserve, and she and I went on back to Atlanta. So that was the end of my war experience.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Let's kind of go back and tell us the details about your uniform. Yeah, and you've talked about your shirt.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well,
why don't you open your coat up and show us your medals and.
Yeah. This is my original belt and tie. Original pants, but I just didn't wear them much over there. This was sort of my dress pants. That when we went to town, I'd put on this thing with my flight jacket, and we'd go to town and have dinner. But this is the original shirt, and if you look at the collar, it's pretty ragged, don't you think? And look at the back, you'll see holes in it. But see,
This is the one you wore behind Japanese monk.
that's right. And that 5-month period, this is the only real shirt of mine. See, I went out there thinking I was going to go and be 1 week. I had a musette bag, and that's all I had was a musette bag with some underwear and socks and that kind of thing. But I had on a uniform, and that's what I took with me. Well, I ended up, when I came back after that 5 months, I was half Chinese uniform, half British. And then there was a boy from Atlanta named Bobby Crumley, who was in the Navy, and he was in their Secret Service type thing with the Chinese. And he was, one of his jobs was to pick up pilots that got shot down, either from the Pacific or our people, the Navy. So he came out in his Navy plane, and they parachuted down near Shanghai, where one of their pilots had gone down, and the Chinese had gotten him and taken him out. But one of them was injured pretty bad, so he came out with a medic and a couple of Navy men, and they jumped up there and got this boy and brought him out through my Chanting base, see, which a lot of them did. They came through there. And so when he came, I said, "Bobby, boy, you're a great guy." And I said, "Boy, you sure have got on good clothes." And I said, you got any spare clothes with you? And he says, "Yeah, I got a little bit." And I said, "Well, I know with the Navy, y'all got everything. So if you think your men have got enough clothes to do a little swapping, how about getting them to lay their stuff out and let my men pick something that they can wear, and then when you get back, I'll give you a note and you can get the quartermaster to replace it for you and the rest of the boys." He said, "Help yourself, I'm the quartermaster." So we did. We took anything they weren't wearing, we took it, see. And so all of us I got a shirt, and I got some socks, pair socks, and the rest of them got the rest of it. But anyway, every man that was there put it on the floor, and we picked up what we could. But that's the way we were. I mean, I didn't have any clothes, and I used Chinese coats and everything else. But that was China in those days.
Now, when you were out doing these, and you were in the forward echelon, what kind of headgear were you wearing?
I usually wore an overseas cap.
Okay.
In that picture I showed you, I had on a coolie hat, and I also had a black raincoat. And now I would be dressed like this with my flight jacket, and I had a raincoat, black raincoat. I always carried it with me, and I had a coolie hat that I wore. I didn't wear the overseas cap. So I looked just so like a Chinese, coolie hat and black raincoat. They couldn't tell my uniform. I didn't want to be caught without a uniform because that's almost death immediately. So with my uniform on and this coolie hat and a raincoat, I could go right close to where the Japs were with the Chinese with me, because they would steer me not to get too close, and they also got my face all darkened. So I was pretty well camouflaged, really. So I did that. Whenever I went behind the Jap lines, I wore that combination.
Yeah, tell us about your ribbons there. I'm going to focus in on those.
Yeah, focusing on them. Now, the first one is a Legion of Merit, an Officer's Legion of Merit.
That's which one?
That's the first one right here.
Right there. Okay.
Yeah, that's the top, your left.
Okay.
That's the top right here, that little rosette.
Okay.
It says you are a Legionnaire, some kind of soldier, but anyway, you're an officer. And this one is a Bronze Star. That's the next one over. I can't get mine. Right there.
You're fine. Yeah.
That's it. Now it has a cluster on it, and that's called a second Bronze Star. So I got 2 Bronze Stars.
What were those awarded for?
Well, they were, the Legion of Merit was for my service with the 68th Wing up until that first evacuation of Quail Inn. That's what this was. And then the second one was for the other. That's the Legion of Merit.
Right.
But the first Bronze Star was from then on evacuating and demolishing and everything the other bases in that area. And that was the remaining 5 bases. So that was my second. My first was that. Now the second one was when I took over Pei-Shi, and I was base commander there. So I got this from General Stone. when I left, the second one. See. All right, the next one is the American Theater, and this is the Chinese American composite. Well, this is the Eastern Theater.
Right.
They got that, which includes CVI, China, Burma, India, and these are 2 campaign stars for the campaigns that we had in China when the Japs were coming down to us, and the last one was a Victory Medal.
Great.
So those are my World War II medals. Now I have a China Service Medal that the Chinese government gave us, but it has no ribbon. It just has it has a ribbon and a medal, but no, you can't get a separate one. So I don't use that one at all.
All right. If you want to pick up your flak jacket
Yeah.
and tell us a little bit about it. Tell
All right.
us the patches on it.
Yeah. Let me fix it so I don't tear it up. This is the China, Burma, India Theater patch, which is left of it, and they had 2 things up here that were China and India. And Burma at that time wasn't very active, so we didn't get anything of this when it was designed. But this is a CBI patch. Can you see it?
Got it.
Okay. All right. Now this is my rank, Lieutenant Colonel, which is a silver leaf, and on this side is Air Force Wings patch. Now the first one just disintegrated, and this I had over there. I had it, so it comes from that era and that time, and I had to just replace it with a new piece of leather here. And this, it just deteriorated because it got felt and so forth, came apart. Now over here on my breast is the 14th Air Force Flying Tiger patch. That's what that is. It's the Flying Tiger. You see him with the wings and the tail. It doesn't show up too well. Can you see it all right?
Hold what you got.
Yeah. You got it?
Too much light.
But that is the
Okay, that's good.
Flying Tiger patch for the 14th Air Force. Now, I always say when I'm in the Flying Tigers, I'm the 14th Air Force Flying Tigers. Those who are in the AVG will tell you they are Flying Tigers. Sometimes they'll say AVG Flying Tiger, but they got the first name. So when they say Flying Tiger, they are the real thing. Then the China Air Task Force is the same thing. They have to say Flying Tiger, China Air Task Force Flying Tigers. And when I say I'm a Flying Tiger, I always say 14th Air Force Flying Tiger.
Now, quick question about the patches on the flak jacket.
Yeah.
Were they made in the theater locally by Chinese or by Americans? Or?
No, these were made either in India or China.
Okay.
And I can't tell you because this is made out of metal thread.
Okay.
See, it's silver and gold and this kind of stuff. They all thread, a metal thread, and that's metal around here. And now this leather is used to hold this thing down because, see, that's sort of felting there. But it's held together all these years. Now this here is my name in English and in Chinese. Because behind the wall, and they could read it in those days, they could write, see here, George Hightower, and in Chinese would be George Hightower. See, George is 2 characters and Hightower is 3. Hightower, be 3 characters. So that was shown here in Chinese, and this is English at the top. Now, looking inside the jacket, it has a very fine liner that is sort of getting worn out a little bit now, but it's still a usable jacket, and it's in fairly good shape, and still fits me, because I weigh today 5 pounds less than I did when I left China.
Really?
I'm about 120 to 123 pounds. Now I weighed 128 pounds when I left China. So my uniform ought to fit me pretty well, right as of right now.
When did you get the jacket?
When I was going through India into China, I knew that supply had to be bad in China with a way to get in there over the hump. So when I was in India, I insisted on getting a flight jacket before I went in, and I was able to convince the guy to give it to me, and so I got it. And I wore it the whole time, and I've used it just for purposes like this.
We've only got about 2 minutes left.
Is that all?
You want to tell us about your Gurkha knife here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to know
Yeah,
about this.
this is a Gurkha, who the British Army had 3 divisions of Gurkha, or divisions or whatever they are, units, that fought with the British in the Far East. They were excellent troops. They didn't use pistols. They used a kukri knife, and that's what this is. It's a knife that's as sharp as a razor, and you can see the way it's built. They use it hand-to-hand battling, and they were so good that they won more Victoria Crosses, which is equivalent of our Medal of Honor, than any other group of people in the British Army. And they were these Gurkhas from up in the Himalayas above India. But that's their knife, and they were experts at it. And their tradition was you never draw it without drawing blood. So if they didn't do it in combat, they cut themselves to draw blood before they put it back.
Now, how did you get it?
Well, I bought it in India.
Did you really?
Yeah. When I was going into India, I had heard about the Gurkhas somehow along the line at Wright Field. I had heard about the Gurkhas. I guess somebody had come back from India somewhere that knew about them. And so I knew what the Gurkhas were. So, and I knew they had a sword like this. And so when I went through India, I looked for it when I was at Karachi, and when I was in town there, and I found a store that was selling them, and I bought one. Now, there's a dagger here. That's the dagger they used, just a hand-to-hand fight type thing. And then here is a honing type. See, it's like the honing you have in your kitchen that you take it out. That's the honing. And this is to polish it off, to make it sharp. And that blade is just as sharp as a razor. I can show you that. And you get too close to it and you got cut, I'll tell you. It's sharp. But that's, and they carried it in their belt like this. See?
You want to tell us about some of these other?
Yeah, this.
Hold on